Addiction. Addiction is a complex issue, and there are various theories as to why it occurs in human behavior. However, the main reason behind addiction is the strong feeling of discomfort or even pain that one experiences when trying to stop the addictive behavior. This can lead to a cycle of repetition, where the person feels trapped and unable to break free from the addiction. The initial motivation for the addiction may be rooted in feelings of depression, lack of purpose or emotion, loneliness, or a desire to escape trauma. The addictive substances or behaviors can vary widely, ranging from illicit drugs such as heroin and cocaine to more socially acceptable substances like caffeine and alcohol, as well as non-substance-related addictions like sex, gaming, and internet use. In any case, addiction can have serious consequences on an individual's physical and mental health, relationships, and overall quality of life. Somehow, it is not easy at all to break the vicious cycle of addiction. Addiction stems from a wounded mind that harbors traumas and fears of death, often carved in childhood. Without understanding the root cause of addiction, it is impossible to be cured. The wounded emotions and fear that come from feeling vulnerable to death are often too strong to bear and cannot be filled with human efforts through addiction. Trauma from incidents in one's life can lead to vulnerability to addiction as a desperate attempt to escape the trauma. Thus, it is important to address the root cause of addiction and seek professional help to heal the wounded mind and overcome addiction. The experience of addiction is similar to taking painkillers to alleviate physical pain. If someone is experiencing severe tooth pain, how can they bear the pain without taking painkillers? Similarly, if a person is carrying deep emotional wounds from past traumas, they may feel an overwhelming desire to escape the pain and fear of death through addiction. In this sense, addiction can be seen as a type of self-medication for mental pain. However, this is a vicious cycle that can be difficult to break. In order to overcome addiction, it is necessary to understand the root cause of the behavior and address the underlying emotional wounds. It is only by confronting and healing these wounds that we can truly escape the cycle of addiction and find lasting freedom. Personally, I have struggled with addiction to work. When I worked hard, my mind felt at peace. I found that this addiction was a painkiller that eased my mental trauma. After finishing my work, I felt nervous and uneasy during my resting time. It was as if my mind was too sensitive to the quiet. For a long time, I was unsure why my mind suffered in this way. I began to reflect on my childhood memories and discovered that I was wounded by a poor family situation. The lack of resources and inability to achieve my desires due to poverty had caused deep trauma in my unconscious mind. As a child, I developed a belief that poverty was my enemy and that it increased my fear of death. Overcoming poverty became my life's purpose. When I reflect on my childhood, I remember another trauma that haunted me, the fear of my parents fighting due to poverty. As a small child, the moments when my parents would argue were unbearable, and I felt as if death was looming over me. It was the fear of death itself that gripped me during those moments, and somehow the poor conditions we lived in were the root cause. This fear of death and trauma continued to drive me even as I grew older, pushing me to work relentlessly to overcome the poverty that had scarred me in childhood. Working gave me a sense of peace and joy, not because I enjoyed it, but because it was a way to avoid facing my fear of death stemming from childhood trauma. However, after working hard, my body would be exhausted and my mind would be nervous and relentless even when resting. On the other hand, when I rested peacefully, I felt the fear of death and became nervous. It was a miserable existence, as I suffered from the trauma of the fear of death in both situations, whether working or not working. In summary, addiction can be seen as a coping mechanism to alleviate the trauma and anxiety caused by the fear of death. To heal this addiction fundamentally, we need to settle down the fear of death. We need to overcome the power of death, in other words, eternal life.